I'm Patricia McPherson, Grassroots Coalition, which I've had 30 years of experience with Ballona wetlands and the Playa Vista site and SoCal Gas, including data collection and also via litigation with all three of those, in which we prevailed. So it's a lot of history that goes into the information contained in this PowerPoint, and also Dr. Margot, who's a recognized leader in restoration in California with years of working experience on Ballona and surrounding areas, and she can further introduce herself. And we're just starting off real quickly here with the 2020 portfolio, so you can move on. I'm sure all you know this is the governor's order. That's Ballona wetlands are part of the unceded lands of the Tonga, and we'd like to acknowledge their heritage on the land and the fact that the site was classified and registered as a sacred site by John Tommy Rosas with the Tonga Gabrielino ancestral nation. I haven't got that quite right, but I have a slide that has it. All right, this is one of your GSP slides, and this is regarding Ballona wetlands, rich biodiversity, that the developer interests have captured clean water flows and altered the function of Ballona's freshwater habitat. Next slide. These are some of the laws regarding the protection of fresh water, as well as, for instance, the Department of Water Resource Resolution 88 disallowing the wasting of fresh water, which there are multiple water codes for that as well. Also, the area has been classified as potential drinking water by the Water Board, and it's classified by a court in a recent Prop 65 lawsuit that it is drinking water. SoCal Gas has to cleanse the water in the contaminated area to a drinking water standard, and should that water quality change via saltwater intrusion or that sort of thing, they would no longer have to remediate to that quality of water. These are historic photos showing typical years of rainfall on Ballona. You can see how it's ponding up. You can also see the Ballona Channel holds the water to the sea, as do the roadways that are raised roadways through there. And with regard to this site, there are multiple lawsuits ongoing regarding the environmental impact report, and the impact report also failed to include hydrology studies of the site itself. Next slide. This is the Poland report that I've included here just as a source. I believe I gave this to all of you a couple of months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, as a source for groundwater information. Poland is the grandfather of hydrology in the Los Angeles Basin that he's done. So contrary to the draft, there is a great deal of data that is available. Next slide. Here's one of your slides, and I'm just using it to show where SoCal Gas is located over on the left, and the Water Board, which is Cleanup and Abatement Order 98125 that you discussed earlier. That water is something that needs to be discussed. We just had a Playa Vista requested to have another NPDES permit to send the water to the sanitary sewer. We objected to that, and the Water Board rejected their request. It is now going into the riparian corridor, which I'll show you in a minute. So all of this water from the Water Board being pumped to cleanse the area goes to either the sanitary sewer and or out to the ocean via that riparian corridor. SoCal Gas underground storage operations affect the entire area over there. Next slide. Here we see your slide again with the green signifying drinking water pumping, and the red signifies all the pumping that we've been getting information on from Playa Vista itself. There's a great deal of this water that is actively being pumped, not just for the cleanup and abatement order, but also for the gas mitigation systems that they lower the groundwater in order to keep the water from invading the gas protection systems that are there. All of that water should be used for Ballona wetlands, which is a groundwater-dependent ecosystem, which this presentation is geared toward, obviously not just the groundwater drinking aspects that you are focused on, but the use of the water to protect a habitat. And managing groundwater sustainability requires the combined effects of the historic, current, and proposed water use not to exceed the hydrologic threshold needs to ensure the continued function of the groundwater-dependent ecosystem, which is Ballona. And I'd like to have you look at this, the future plan as per CDFW. You see in the green arrow there the saltwater intrusion plan for the area, which is not discussed in the draft, and we believe it needs to be as part of the future potentials that could come into the area. Also, with regard to how it would affect contamination in the area via SoCal gas and corrosion issues of that salt water upon all the infrastructure of SoCal gas. Also, the subsidence issues have not been discussed. I believe in the draft it said there is no water depletion subsidence for the area, when in fact there's actually a great deal. There's 2 feet of subsidence bowl in the Venice area down to Ballona that is similar to what happened in Kings Harbor in Redondo Beach. One year we had a heavy storm. It overtopped through there. There were millions of dollars worth of damage, lawsuits that the Corps, city and county had to pay for the damage that was done due to oil field subsidence that was 2 feet. We have INSAR data as a result of Grassroots Coalition's lawsuit. That information needs to be included in a groundwater-dependent ecosystem study, which is a unique type of study specifically for the ecology to flourish here at Ballona. The draft discusses some INSAR. I wasn't aware of where that INSAR data came from, but all of that is very important for this area. We also have a study done on the Playa Vista site itself from Dr. Bernard Endres that is also not included, that we believe needs to be included. Next one. And this is yours. I'm just saying that the basic hydrology of evaluation needs to include water board data, Department of Sanitation data, which would be the data that is being pumped and sent from Playa Vista, and include the historical data, the Poland report, House Document 389, which was the creation of the Marina and what effects it had on hydrology and the area. Next slide. And this has a insert to the right there, which is from Playa Vista's EIR. The water table at Playa Vista is at or near surface. I saw no reference to the EIR information and all the studies included from that, which is important to maintain that water table. Next slide. And here on the left is California Department of Fish and Wildlife, GSP language, and suggestions for how to go about doing a GDE study, which is very important to do for Ballona, which has yet to be done. It's a reserve, an ecological reserve, very rare complex of ecosystems ranging from the predominantly seasonal freshwater brackish wetlands, prairie grasslands, and uplands that are rife with rare and endangered and special status wildlife and species, and over 200 species of birds and different kinds of native plants and animals. And Dr. Griswold will explain some of this chart that is here, where we have inconsistencies regarding regional patterns of loss in coastal wetlands, and in particular how rare freshwater coastal wetlands truly are now. Next slide. And this is just a picture reminding us of when the Groundwater Sustainability Act came into play. I've overlaid pictures from Ballona of wildlife that are there, and to reinforce the fact, next slide, that we have spent over $140 million just to acquire this area. This again shows all the freshwater ponding on Ballona, gives you an image of it. Next slide. And here is Playa Vista on areas that are now built up, but as you can see, this is just normal ponding that is there when we have a normal rainy season. It ponds because the water table is high at or near the surface. and when it rains, it ponds rapidly and readily. Up on the upper left, you can see a pump where they were pumping it out to a drainage area that took it out to sea. Next slide.
I'm just going to jump in very briefly to let you know you've got about 3 minutes left in your 15 minutes.
Well, then I give up and I'll just hand it over to Dr. Griswold. This is fun.
Okay. Well, as Patricia's indicated, these are some of the spider maps and drainages and water that's being pumped and put out either through the sanitary sewer, which now is stopped, or through the drainage to Playa Vista, to the Ballona channel. And these are some examples of the unpermitted drains that were placed in the wetlands over 20 years ago, draining away not only surface water but groundwater. And the Coastal Commission ordered them capped. And I'm just going to run through these.
This was all after a lawsuit to enforce that in happening and allowing them to do that.
So we know that according to John Tommy Rosas, that the Tonga call this area, which we have the whole watershed and Ballona wetlands here, they call it full of water, and that's surface and groundwater, and it's fresh water. So this is clarified in recent reports. The Ballona Creek Historical Ecology talks about the Ballona wetlands as well as a classification of estuaries based on natural closure. The Ballona wetlands was not a full tidal wetlands. It hasn't been for over 4,000 years. And its trajectory was to full closure, fresh water to brackish water. And this is a fact that we need to identify in this GSP. This is a picture when the drains shown here in the left were operating after they were capped. So they operated for over 20 years. After they were capped within 3 years, this is the pickleweed vegetation that came back on its own, no management other than the enforced capping of the drains. And these drains are located here in what we call Area B of the Ballona wetlands. So it had been documented as a wetland area, and then it was being drained, so it wasn't documented as a wetland area. So there are some major inconsistencies with baseline. Pickleweed is important in this groundwater-dependent ecosystem because of endangered species such as the savanna sparrow, as well as all the other organisms that use the Ballona wetlands. So you can't just consider the Ballona wetlands as a few areas where you think they are groundwater-dependent vegetation. You must consider the entire 600 acres, and we would ask that you do that and reconsider what you're calling and where you got your information for 40 acres of groundwater-dependent vegetation. This is a cartoon of from their final EIR of the plan by the state to open, to remove 3.2 million cubic yards of soil, to open this to full tidal wetlands, in other words, saltwater. Why would you want to do such a thing? It's predicated on an idea that Area A here on the northern side of the Ballona flood control channel was filled by soil dredged for the Marina del Rey. Here, in comparison,
I am going to say, we're at our 15 minutes. I would like you to be able to wrap up and
okay.
finish it up, but I do want to leave time. It's an important presentation. It's important information, and I do want to leave time for questions. So,
okay, I'll wrap it up, but There is data that shows no fill was placed. The fill was actually placed on the beach. There is data that shows in 1986, 20 years after the marina, there were wetlands in this area. And in the 1990 archaeological report from Playa Vista, this area is shown as no surface disturbance. In other words, no fill was placed there. What is most important to this group, I think, is opening up the Ballona wetlands to full tidal, which it never was, on a daily basis, may increase that saltwater intrusion that we all worried about. So, based on your predictions of future groundwater use in the basin, I think the potential for saltwater intrusion needs to be identified. And so we would say further study on the groundwater dependent ecosystem of the 600 and plus acres at the Ballona wetlands. It's interconnected surface to groundwater. It's exactly what we're talking about. And I think we really need to look at the wastage of groundwater at Playa Vista, which is starving the Ballona wetlands as well. So there are a lot of interconnections. I know we're out of time, but there you have. You can ask us anything, anytime, give us a call.
I really appreciate the information, and I do hope that you've made a lot of really great points and provided some references to other data that you'd like us to consider. So I hope you do write those down and provide those references so that we can take a look at that and incorporate that as we can.
And I think we should, Jill, one of the major points in the GSP is we had talked about that we need an additional well in the Marina Del Rey area. We're lacking very deep wells. And so this GSA is prepared to team up with USGS at some point and get a well installed to give us more information. And that is the beauty of this dynamic process, is that we're going to look for more projects and look for more data.
And what we're saying is another monitoring well. This is not a production well.
I understand.
Yeah.
And what we would ask for is an actual GDE study to be done for this area, for the protocols that already exist, especially because this is an ecological reserve.
Is that whether you've been with us for this whole journey or you're coming in now, I am always available to meet one-on-one with Zoom. If you're jumping into that magnificent draft GSP document and you want a little background, I will also say that we're recording tonight, as we've been recording all through 2020 and 2021. So some of the groundwater modeling efforts are really state-of-the-art. And you can listen to Antera do a complete description of how they did the modeling program. If you go to the website and go back to any one of those on the agendas, and you can click Zoom and come right up to speed with those of us that have been here, for the past 2 years. So it's never too late to come up to speed to learn everything that's been happening.
Very briefly, this is a cutout of a map. It's actually from a figure in the Groundwater Sustainability Plan showing the outline of the Santa Monica subbasin in blue. There are 5 member agencies of the Santa Monica subbasin, Santa Monica Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Those are the City of Santa Monica, the City of Los Angeles through the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, the City of Culver City, City of Beverly Hills, and the County of Los Angeles. So they are the member agencies of this Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Really what they're intended to do is be roadmaps for how groundwater basins will ensure long-term sustainable use of their groundwater resources. And so a GSP is both a technical and a planning document. Up front in chapter 2, and we're going to get into that just in a little bit more detail. That's really the technical meat of the document. You're going to have a hydrogeologic understanding of the basin, the setting, the background. What are the primary aquifers? How thick are they? What's the depth to groundwater? All of those things that I get very excited about, but can put other people to sleep from time to time. We also will get into detailed explanations of what are the sources of water, how is water used, and when I say water here, I really am talking about groundwater in the basin. So what are the uses of groundwater and what are the sources of groundwater? Then there's an element of looking forward, a large element of looking forward with this plan, looking at what the predicted future groundwater use and conditions will be in the basin, and selecting criteria by which to manage the basin based on 6 sustainability indicators. And for those of you who have been with us before, you've heard me talk about these sustainability indicators on and on and on, but they really are the heart of this plan. So through the plan, there's an estimate of what the sustainable yield of the basin would be, and that sustainable yield would be the pumping rate that could occur over a 50-year planning and implementation period without causing undesirable results related to chronic declines in groundwater level, change in groundwater storage, groundwater quality, land subsidence related to groundwater production. And again, the groundwater quality has to be related to groundwater production. Also looking at interconnected surface water and groundwater, and particularly important for this subbasin is looking at the influence of groundwater production on the potential for seawater intrusion. So that's really the heart of the plan. And as we move through this, you'll see the different stages that we went through to develop the plan in the form that it is today. We're also going to have a presentation on the Ballona wetlands. And so Dr. Margot Griswold and I think Patricia McPherson are going to present on the wetlands. Patricia is the president of the Grassroots Coalition, and Dr. Griswold is a restoration ecologist involved with the wetlands effort as well. You know, we have done the groundwater dependent ecosystem work under Sigma to the requirements of Sigma, but you know, we're happy to go over that in more detail with you after this call. I do want to be mindful of people's time. The presentation that you just heard, I know she can put you in touch with Tricia and Dr. Griswold on this. And so if you have questions for them, I'm assuming that's fine with both of you if Lizette refers people with questions to you two. Yeah, I'm getting some head nods. Okay, great. And so if you have questions on that, please reach out to Lizette. She can get you in touch with people to answer those questions if she can't handle it. And obviously, if you have questions on the groundwater sustainability plan, please reach out, and we encourage you to submit those written comments to us to improve the plan. There's a reason that we're going through this. This is a draft, and it could use your comments and your input to make it better. So we welcome that feedback, and we welcome those letters.
And this really is the secret to success as a community and as protectors of the environment. Is we need everyone's input with full respect and open minds and open hearts. And this is how it happens. It's a collaborative effort, and we're not done. You know, like I said, this is the beginning of a march forward with drought and with all of the, things that are coming at us. We need the best and the brightest minds. We need the passion to continue as we march. We're just beginning to go forward on how this plan will continue to, be designed, implemented, and altered as we move forward. So we will continue. So I know someone had said, if I don't get by September 28th, and I'm like, that is only for one set or comments, but no, we want your voices to always continue as stakeholders in this very important project.
Yeah, Patricia, I can actually see you.
Yes, I know. And I actually don't understand why you couldn't do this like regular Zoom meetings where everybody is like this, but for another day. And I agree with Jeanette on that. And you guys are unique in not doing that. So I don't understand it. But I think for us, what is very important is, aside from questions, to come and say, okay, where in this report is, for instance, the INSAR data? It mentions it, but it doesn't say what in particular. I wasn't able to find it. But the key for us is, in what I've seen, is because you are the GSP group, you are tasked with being able to, now that this is a groundwater dependent ecosystem, groundwater dependent ecosystems have a set of things that, from 101, basic 101, that one does in order to study it. So while I appreciate you asking us for information, and we want to be able to share with you our information, the investigative burden also, I would think, falls on you, as it states for GSP management, to, for instance, bring in the Department of Sanitation to help us garner the information from the Department of Sanitation. How is it metered? The water that is being sent to sanitation from Playa Vista, for the gas mitigation systems, and that the water board sends, for instance. The water board, for instance, had no idea. In recent meetings, they discussed they had no idea it was actually being, gone out to sea via the main drain that was on one of those maps that you saw, even when it goes flowing into the freshwater marsh. So, for instance, the NPDES permit that they just denied Playa Vista to send it to the sanitary sewer, and that they would send it into the riparian corridor, it ultimately ends out in the ocean, which is perhaps even worse than going to sanitary sewer. But these are the things that we need to have your help as the GSP to make this happen. I'm nobody. You're a somebody.
You'd be surprised at the power of stakeholders, particularly in this process.
I've been here for 30 years doing this, so I just, and I appreciate you guys talking about all of this with us. But I'm just, making that, our request.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I think